Well, good morning. It's great to be part of this NewThing training. I'm the first person in this beta test of providing training through our NewThing network. So welcome. I hope you really enjoy it. My name's Kim Hammond, and I'm the Director of Missional Imagination and Innovation for Community Christian Church, and I work with our NewThing churches. And I happen to also be the Director of Forge America. So that's what I do. I've got some thoughts about mission and how to be all in. I'd like to share them with you. You know, Dave wrote a book with Alan Hirsch about 2 years ago called On the Verge. And it's a book that's kind of shaped our church and our movement of NewThing churches about how we make this paradigm towards missional living and thinking. And I get asked all over the country and around the world, I was just in Russia, about how do we make this paradigm shift? How do we unleash the entire people of God onto mission? You know, we as a movement are very committed to sending in our church and in our movement of churches, all through NewThing. If you're part of the NewThing network, you have a sending impulse, which means we reproduce at every level and we start a new campus or new church every 11 days. Well, with that in mind, how do we not only just continue to plant churches and new campuses and reproduce artists, but how do we mobilize the entire people of God for mission? And here's some thoughts I have. Firstly, if you're making the missional shift, are you all in theologically? You know, there's so many books out there now about mission, and it's kind of become very, very trendy, the word missional. But what I'm really interested in for our NewThing churches is, do we really believe in the Missio Dei? I mean, can you teach it so much that it leaks from your soul? Not just regurgitate information, but actually, do you really believe in the premise of it theologically? Secondly, have you experienced it yourself? Are you a practitioner? Are you on mission? So are you taking the reflection and seeing it outworked in your everyday life? You know, we know that Jesus died for our sins and the Father sent him. We know that he, after he died, was raised from the dead and he ascended. And he didn't stay here to do the work of mission, but he sends us. John 20:21 says that, you know, as the Father has sent me, so I send you. And so this sending impulse, how can we get it right across our entire church? And I'm absolutely convinced it comes down to seeing every person be on mission and seeing them unleashed. So number one, do you believe in it theologically? Are you all in theologically? Secondly, are you all in practically? Like, what is the mechanism by which we want to see a missional movement happen? You know, whether you call it small groups or journey groups or the new trendy word missional communities, nothing wrong if you use that. But what is the mechanism by which we think missional movement can happen? You know, if it is in our DNA, a community we say helping people find their way back to God, that's in our DNA from the start, and many NewThing churches are based upon that reproducing DNA of helping other people, whatever your language is, find their way back into the kingdom, to discover the tangible kingdom. What is the mechanism by which we'll see it? Now, we have Sundays, and we know Sundays is really important. We know that we need to gather, and we're not in any way decreasing the importance of the Sunday. I think we should gather, and gather often. And the yellow box, you can come to 5 services. Knock yourself out. It's fantastic. But what I'm interested in is the scattering. How do we gather and scatter the people of God? And we do lots of really good resources and things around the gathering. But what is the mechanism by which we scatter people, not just to be by themselves, unaccountable? You know, sometimes I have people come to me and say, I believe in missional, I go to the pub. And I say, go away from me, you moron. Going to the pub by yourself is not missional. It's meant to be in community, accountable, coached, trained, sent community. So at community, we've seen the small groups as the major vehicle by which we send people into mission. Now, there are times that people will share their life and come back and tell the stories of mission and how they do it in their own families and their own workplaces, but still they belong to a small group that holds them accountable, helps them process it. Whether you call it journey groups, small groups, missional communities, my question to you is, do you believe in it? This mechanism, this structure or thing that will help mobilize the entire people of God. I believe in small groups. When I got to CCC, even though I'd been a youth pastor and I'd been a a small group pastor and I led my own church as the lead pastor for 10 years, I became an apprentice. I went through turbo training. I reproduced under leaders in our church because I believe in what CCC and NewThing believes in the apprenticing of people. Now, I don't want you to have any illusions about small groups. They're not magical. It's not like the show Friends or any of these shows that you see, because real life is messy and people are messy. And I have to be honest with you, my group sucks sometimes. I mean, it's terrible. It's awful. People come and they eat all my food. They don't bring enough food. They wreck my stuff. Sometimes they're grumpy. I'm grumpy because I've travelled. Small groups is not the magic bullet. It's not like they're the best utopia of relationships. But they are the vehicle by which we can share life. And shared life is how Jesus discipled. It's how he modelled mission. And if we continue to be a church that gathers and does that well and opens the word and worships and teaches, we need to also be a movement of churches that mobilises the people of God. I think you have to be all in to a particular mechanism that will see imagination unleashed. That will see not the staff run everything, but see the staff be cultivators of mission. To see that any person can discover their mission now and get involved in serving God. Are you in a small group, a journey group, a missional community? Do you believe in it? So number one, are you all in theologically? Number two, are you all in small groups or whatever the mechanism is? And the last one is, are you all in practically? What I mean by practically is, what are the ways you are practicing a missional posture? You know, there's lots of talk about missional. There's lots of conversations, there's lots of conferences, there's lots of blogs about Twitter that talk about their Facebook posts that tumble. But in the end, the question is, how do we, the people of God and leaders, live out the missional practices? If you look right across the missional movement, the most consistent thing, whether they're large multi-site churches or whether they're house churches, is the commonality of practices. And here at Community, we developed these practices called Bless. Now, Bless isn't magical. There's bells that Michael Frost developed, and Lance Ford and Brad Briscoe and the Mission Essentials have got light. But I'm kind of biased to Dave Ferguson because he's my boss. So let's use Bless for now. I think you could come up with your own, but ours are pretty good. We can sell them to you pretty cheaply. I'm joking, they're probably free. Bless allows us to ask the question, what does it mean to practice a missional lifestyle? So here's my question to you. Are you practicing a life of mission? What does it mean? And I just want to talk you through some practical ways that you could really bless people every day. Well, firstly, the B is begin with prayer. And so often I think as Americans, I'm not American, but I love America, Americans can rush to get to the S and skip the B, begin with prayer, listen and eat. And that's because you're a manufacturing country. You're a country of doers, which I love about, which is why I moved here. I mean, I have a little competition with you. I named my son Jordan after Michael Jordan. I love America. I named my second son Carter after Dr. Carter from ER. Okay, boom, I win. So I love America so much, but let me say what I think about Americans is that sometimes they can miss the practicing of being still and looking for God at work. B, begin with prayer, says, God, you're at work in this world and I want to join you. I'm not just asking you to bless what I'm doing. I see where you're at work in the world, it's already blessed. I want to join you. Here's some practical things you could do. Have you ever prayer walked where you live? Have you ever gone to where some of the neediest areas are and sat and just prayed? Have you ever said to God, God, those people, whoever that X are, of different race, colour, economics, whatever it is, God, break my heart like your heart breaks for them. These are the practices of B, beginning with prayer. Well, L is listen, and listening is a hard skill. Let me tell you, as a person who talks, and I can talk underwater with marbles in my mouth. I was built for America, because I can say this about Americans. They love to talk. You know, I travel all over this country and people say, oh, you're from Australia. No one asks me about Australia. They all tell me they all want to go to Australia. They all dreamed about going to Australia, or they've been to Australia, or they've not been and they tell me about everywhere else they've been. Americans are kind of built, I think, sometimes to talk about their story. And it's a beautiful part of American culture. I'll meet people and I'll say to them, well, what college are you from? And they'll give me the 42-hour history of that particular college. I recently met someone from Iowa, and they told me about how their mascot is a nut. And I stared at them very interestingly and said, it's a nut? You couldn't find a better mascot than a nut? They got really upset, and they pulled out off their shelves, like the books behind me, just pages and pages of volumes of books on this particular buckeye nut. It's the strongest nut in the world. All right, I get it. It's a nut. Americans can talk very easily. In fact, all of us can talk very easily, but do we take the time to listen? Many of you know that my son has leukemia, and I noticed about 6 months ago my wife was starting to sort of fray at the edge a little bit. She was getting tired, and I asked her, honey, what is it that you need? How can I help you? You know, it's been a 3-year journey of chemotherapy, and you know, she's a proudful woman. She's a great woman. She's a 9.5 out of 10. If she liked an action movie, she'd be a 10 out of 10. She doesn't really want to ask for help, and most people don't want to ask for help. But I pushed her, and finally I talked to another mum in the hospital and who'd gone through the journey that we've gone through with our son Carter and him getting treatment for leukemia. And the mum sat my wife down and said, Maria, I know how you feel. Tell me what your weeks are like with Carter. And I listened to my wife just tell her story and how it's a long drive into the city and how often Carter is sick in the car and how she's often exhausted just from the steroids and from all the treatment. I finally realised what my wife really needed was someone just to listen to her, just to share her story, her pain. And then this wonderful mum from the hospital said, do you just need meals? Would a meal around treatment time help? And my wife, with tears in her eyes, said, yes, meals would just be so great because the chemotherapy changes his taste buds and everything tastes metallic, and so he's really fussy, and then I can't feed all the other kids. And this simple act of listening just blessed my wife and my family so much. And I think so often we presume what people need. You know, we make the assumptions, but when we listen to people, they actually tell us, and we can minister in ways that are quite powerful. The next one is eat. It's one of my favourites. And eating in the Middle East, my mum's from Egypt. She was born in Egypt. And eating is a transaction of friendship. It actually means that this isn't just convenience. It's actually we are friends. When you eat with somebody, you're saying, let's share some life. And imagine beginning with prayer, then you listen, and then you actually share a meal. And a meal is about generosity. Again, being very honest, sometimes I notice some Christians, none that are in this room, none in our NewThing network, but you know those Christians down the road, they tend to be not very generous. I go to a barbecue sometimes with some Christians, and they bring their own meat, and they cook it for themselves. That's outrageous. When do you only bring meat for yourself? My neighbours across the road, both of them lost their jobs. And at every single Bears game, they continue to buy racks of ribs for every single person in our street. Incredible generosity. I often ask churches, why do they serve crappy coffee? That's the reputation we have. Christians should serve the best coffee. We should have the most ribs. You know, John 1 talks about Jesus and the very first miracle. And it was a wedding, and he took the wine, and they ran out of wine, and he took water and he turned it into wine. And it was the best wine. Now, it's not a sermon about alcoholism or alcohol. It's a sermon about generosity and the ushering in of the kingdom of God. Jesus, in his first miracle, at a pagan wedding with people who are far from God, ushered in an incredible act of generosity, probably saving face for a father who didn't need to put enough wine away, but definitely blessing a bunch of people. And he did this to show that part of Christianity is eating. In fact, Jesus was known for eating and drinking with the most sinners. I don't think Jesus ever got drunk. I know that for sure. I don't think he was a glutton. But he was proud of the fact that he ate with people, and they called him a friend of sinners. Well, that brings us to the S, that's the serve. That's the one that most Americans love. And I think we should serve, and we should definitely think of ways that we can meet the needs of people. But you think about it like this. If you've really began with prayer, I mean, you've really listened to God, you've asked God to break your heart, you've looked in the world and you've said, God, I want to join where you're already at work. and you've listened to the rhythms of your community and to the needs of your community. Then you've had a transaction of friendship. Imagine then you began to serve out of relationship, not as projects, but because of people you love. People often ask me, I don't know where to serve. Let me give you a couple of really practical things you can do quickly as I finish. Buy the newspaper. Get a highlighter with your small group. Meet in a public place, and then read through the local newspaper. And I guarantee you by the time you finish, you'll have more than enough needs to meet in a year or two. Well, that takes us to the last S, which is story. If you began with prayer, if you have listened to the culture and really understand what it's saying it needs, you've eaten with people not as a project but as an act of generosity and kindness and love, and you've served them out of relationship where not only are you blessing them, but they've blessed you because you've been able to participate in the kingdom. You get to name Jesus in the midst. You get to share your story, which nobody can take away. And you'll be able to proclaim the good news because people will ask you why you laugh loud and often, and why you buy more ribs than anyone, and why you tip more than anybody else, because that's what it means to practice the presence of Jesus. I hope that you'll be the kind of Christian that believes in the Missio Dei. I hope you'll be the kind of Christ follower who belongs to a small group of people that you share life with and do mission with, and I hope you can practice bless. Thanks for listening today. I hope you have a wonderful time. Thank you.